You may recollect that the LCA flew in 2001. The aircraft which flew before that, the Indian aircraft that is, was the HF-24 which flew in 1961, 40 years back. From 1961 to 2001, we had not done any prototype aircraft flying of the fighter class. And therefore, there was a gap in knowledge. The designers who had learned from the HF-24 program had retired, and not only had they retired, the sons also would have retired by the time the Tejas LCA was being conceptualized. At Daulat Beg Oldi, which is probably the highest airfield I am aware of, which has been used, there is a requirement to, you land there, you cannot even switch off. Firstly, you cannot refuel because there's no fuel available there. And moreover, you cannot switch off because the chances of the engine starting up at those altitudes are iffy at best. Me being a test pilot, decided to fly the aircraft from the front seat. Many other people had flown the Rafale before that from the rear seat. I was flying it from the front seat. 4th of June 1999 will be forever seared in my memory. That was the day that we stuck at Tiger Hill, and it was the first time that the Indian Air Force was dropping laser-guided bombs against an enemy. We had dropped laser-guided bombs before, all in training, and this was the first time that it was being done against an enemy force which had climbed and captured Tiger Hill top and was occupying it.
Hello, defense lovers. Welcome to a fresh episode of our SquadCast series. I am Kamesh, your host for this episode. We have a very special guest in our show today, and I am immensely pleased to introduce him to you all. His team's mission, especially his sortie, was instrumental in turning the Kargil's war in India's favor. He is fondly called by many as the hero of Tiger Hill bombing. He has over 5,100 hours of flying experience, out of which 2,300 hours were on Mirage 2000 alone. He was the Air Officer, Commander-in-Chief of Western Air Command, before retiring on October last year. Welcome to our show, Air Marshal Raghunath Nambiar, sir.
Thank you.
Air Marshal, sir, good day. It's an honor for us to have you on our show. Sir, for our viewers, please take us through your Tiger Hill bombing operation, sir. Why were the Mirage 2000 chosen for the operation, and which other flight had accompanied you during this mission?
Thank you, Kamesh, for hosting me this morning. I'm so happy that I can address people who are keen on joining the defense service and aspire to become soldiers and sailors and airmen in our defense forces. The 24th of June 1999 will be forever seared in my memory. That was the day that we stuck at Tiger Hill, and it was the first time that the Indian Air Force was dropping laser-guided bombs against an enemy. We had dropped laser-guided bombs before, all in training, and this was the first time that it was being done against an enemy force which had climbed and captured Tiger Hill top and was occupying it. Our army had been trying to capture Tiger Hill for almost 2 weeks before that and had been slowly advancing up. It had captured Tololing, and therefore the next in the sequence of events in terms of the lay of the land was Tiger Hill. Now, Tiger Hill is about 5,062 meters tall above main sea level and is about 6,000 feet higher than the valley, which is it overlooks. Tiger Hill was very strategically important because the enemy camp, which was located right on the tip of Tiger Hill, could oversee the strategic highway NH1A, which ran from Srinagar to Leh, Ladakh, and was crucial to supplying our troops in the Ladakh sector and in Siachen with all the requirements of sustenance, both in terms of food as well as ammunition and other equipment, which are very, very important especially in the cold season. The winters of 1998, early 1999 were not as strong as is normal in that part of the world. The Pakistanis, taking advantage of this fact, had come into our territory and occupied some strategic heights with a view to blocking NH-1A. And sitting on top of Tiger Hill, they could clearly view NH-1A through a large stretch, and thereafter could direct artillery fire from their side of the border onto our uh, convoy movement. This was creating serious problems for us as it had shut down road travel substantially. Road travel was now at a trickle of what it normally used to be. And therefore, it was very crucial for us to take over Tiger Hill or any other vantage point that the enemy had occupied as quickly as possible to prevent them targeting our highway. Tiger Hill top consisted of a lot of small ridges, and perched on a small plateau on top of this was about 9 enemy tents, Arctic tents. The wind speed there is in the order of about 50 to 70 kilometers per hour regularly, and you require really good infrastructure to maintain yourself on top of that. And the enemy had climbed that place and was being regularly supplied from their side of the border with food and everything else. So therefore, Tiger Hill was a very crucial target for us from every point of view. And that is the reason why we chose to go at it with the best of capabilities that we had. That was the laser guided bomb for precision attack. You remember, this was 21 years ago, and the best equipment that we had was the laser guided bomb. Since then, we have had more and better equipment coming into our inventory. But at that point in time, the laser guided bomb was what we had at best. And the only aircraft that could drop laser guided bomb, a proven performance, was the Mirage 2000. And that's why the Mirage 2000 was selected. Uh, Mirage 2000 came into the Indian Air Force way back in 1985. And in 1999, it's about 19 years old in service. It had come with an original French bomb, which was a 1,000 kg bomb, which would have been an overkill. And that bomb was specifically designed for hitting bridges and dams and such big infrastructure, and not for small camps or anything such like. And therefore, a major task was undertaken by the technicians and testing community back in Bangalore and in Gwalior to adapt the Mirage 2000 to carry the payaway 2 bomb and the lightning laser guided pod. These were being employed for the first time. The lightning laser guided pod was a day and night pod which had been procured from Israel in 1997, and they yet to get fully qualified on the Mirage. And the payaway 2, which was procured around the same time, was not yet tested and proven. That is this time at which the Kargil operations began. Therefore, Tiger Hill on the 24th of June was almost a month after air operations had started. And this is the sort of time it took us to get this combination of the payaway laser guided bomb and the lightning laser designation pod together on the Mirage to fly it successfully. The 24th of June, the weather was perfect, and we departed Adhampur, which is about 500 kilometers away in Punjab, just next to Jalandhar, south of Amritsar. We set course for the target at about 6:30 in the morning, and we arrived over Dras. Tiger Hill is just northwest of Dras. We arrived there at around 7 o'clock. It takes half an hour to navigate that distance. And we consisted of 3 Mirage 2000s. 2 of us carried laser guided bombs, 1 each. And another Mirage was there as an observer, with the Chief of Air Staff himself wanting to view with his own eyes what was the effect of a laser guided bomb attack. This was a mission which was rather very important. And the eyes of the entire Indian Air Force was on us to see what exactly was happening, and there was a lot of pressure on all of us to perform. The challenges were that we were doing something for the first time in our lives. None of us had dropped laser guided bombs from the lightning pod and the pivot 2 at that, but we were doing it in operations. And the chief of the Air Force himself was viewing what was happening. You can imagine the sort of pressure that comes upon you when such sort of odds are pitched. And on top of that, the target itself was at an elevation of 5 kilometers above sea level. There were enemies perched on top. They were equipped with Stinger missiles, and they were known to use Stinger missiles against our aircrafts in the past. We had already lost uh, 2 aircrafts due to the Stinger missile, and therefore all these challenges were all combined together. All these pressures were all sort of mixed together, and it was now upon us to perform. And I must tell you, I'm rather happy and satisfied that that day went well, and we achieved exactly what we set out to do.
Great, sir. And I must say that it must have been a very thrilling experience, at the same time a nerve-wracking one, since I mean, as you mentioned, it was the first time we were using a I mean, Israeli laser designation pod, guiding from the US, which would be fitted on Indian bomb, which would be dropped out of a French made fighter aircraft. I mean, how did you pull off this Herculean task? I mean, were there any challenges, integrating these hardwares together? How did you pull it out, sir?
Oh yeah, it was a very challenging piece of hard work. It was a team effort. A lot of people involved, and luckily for us, everything came together in time to make this mission successful. Uh, you must remember that these were done not without the, we did not have the source code for the Mirage 2000, and therefore what we were doing was some sort of a jailbreak sort of an effort, which is popularly what is done by hacking into some other system to determine what exactly that you could emulate, or we could sort of suppress, or we could sort of obliquely address. And there is this element that a bug or two left behind in this effort might prove to be fatal in your task achievement. Unfortunately for us, everything just fell in place, and the hard work and the team effort of all the people, both at Gwalior and in Bangalore and in Adampur, all of us, I think, in some way or the other, contributed to make it happen, and we were lucky. I must tell you that an immense amount of luck was involved, and I think uh, we were very fortunate. As far as you're asking a question as to who and all were there in that formation, I just mentioned the 3 Mirages. In addition to that, there were 2 Mirages which were airborne from Ambala, and they were to provide us air defense cover if there was any enemy opposition to what we were doing. They were there to support us, and they were equipped with beyond visual range missiles called the S530D, which is a French Matra missile, and they were also armed with the Magic 550s, Magic 2s, which we also had with us on our stations to use for short range interception or for self defense. We were well equipped. We had the best of aircraft which were there, the Indian Air Force at that time, with the best of weapons systems and a lot of luck.
Great, sir. Sir, on a lighter note, that's why people, if I'm not wrong, people term you as the king of jugaad of Kargil bombing.
No, that's not true. I think there are a lot. It's a team effort, and let me tell you, no single human being in our Air Force can make so much of differences. It's a total team effort. People have to be together, like-minded people, smart, intelligent, mature people, people with the ability to take risks and with the ability to push through. So there were so many people involved, both the leadership, which pushed through and made sure that Everything happened in time. We got all the resources at the available with the Air Force together, sort of focused it on to this particular program and got it doing. More than the uh, laser guided bomb and the laser designation pod combination, I would consider the 1,000-pounder on the Mirage 2000 one of the most important turning points. You may recollect that in the beginning the Mirages were not designed for or not purchased for air to ground attack, and therefore we had only air defense missiles and air interception missiles, both short range as well as long range. When the Kargil war started, there was nothing with the Mirage fleet. It was like never considered likely that the Mirage fleet would be employed for air to ground other than for laser designation, laser delivery, and that too with the French bombs. So this shift or change in the requirements, which came upon us with the intrusion by the Pakistanis into our territory, required a lot of out of the box thinking. What we call jugaad is actually frugal engineering, so to speak. There is no jugaad in the sense you take shortcuts or you let safety go into one corner. You have to be capable enough of not taking any chances, because aviation is inherently risky, and
True.
a failure or two or a mistake or two could be fatal and could have immense consequences. And therefore, what was actually being done was frugal engineering. Perhaps the systematic process under which a particular weapon system is certified was not really and truly followed, but we took intelligent engineering decisions, um, primarily because of our background, our maturity, our training. I'm a test pilot, and along with me were two other test pilots in the squadron. I mean, we were the accumulated knowledge of all of us went into what we did, and as I mentioned before, luck, and therefore nothing went wrong and everything worked. But there was this innate internalized capability to take decisions which were crucial in nature in a timely manner, but with safety paramount. At the end of the day, if you do something foolish and you lose an aircraft because of that, it would have been criminally negligent on our part. So therefore, this was a team effort. This was a mature decision-making process. We had the leadership not only giving us all the resources, they were also breathing down our neck to make sure nothing went wrong, and they had given us full support. So I think all in all, it was from our point of view, given the resources which we had at the beginning, what we achieved at the end was really flabbergasting.
True, sir. And uh, as we would say that it was a very innovative way to overcome a lacuna which we were facing at that time, because we will be having immense pressure to go out and deliver there. So it was a very out of the box thinking that was developed at that time to overcome the lacuna. Appreciate the entire team for that, sir.
This is the same thing which is going to happen in any war. We will
Yes,
never
yes.
find everything what we want with us when we go to war
Yes,
or we
yes.
get into some sort of operational scenario. And therefore, what we will always require is intelligent people sitting on top to make the
Mhm,
right judgment and to
mhm.
make sure that we win.
So, we spoke about integrating different systems for especially for this mission. So during this mission, did you face any challenge with respect to the hardware? I mean, were you able to operate them to the optimal requirement, or did you face any challenges in terms of the hardware?
No, not really. The challenges were that we were doing it for the first time, and there were invariably bound to be bugs or uh, flaws which were not very detectable until you actually do it. In the normal course, we would have gone through a process of testing where the system would have been proven in peacetime in our air to ground ranges. It would be checked out thoroughly. All the various combinations and permutations possible would have been checked out. And then all the issues would have been fixed. And then only would we be qualifying it for squadron service. Here, unfortunately, we did not have that sort of time, or we didn't have that sort of cushion available to us. We had to function in a warlike scenario. We had to get the job done in quick time, and all the normal process and procedure and time which is generally available was not there. So therefore, this is natural, but in war, such sort of tightening of time belt and the time would have to be done to make good what we were supposed to do.
Okay. But overall, the mission was very successful, and as it is said, the end is what actually matters in a war. So we are curious to know, had it been a new age fighter instead of Mirages of that time, how different the scenario would have
It would have been the same. The Mirage was the new age fighter of that time. It was the Rafale, even though it was about 19 years old then. It was the Rafale of today in terms of technology. That is the
been. Okay.
best we had, and it is better than what the other side had. So in every which way, it was a new age fighter. It was a modern fourth generation aircraft. It had electronic warfare. It had laser guided bomb delivery capability, and it was equipped with beyond visual range missiles, which the enemy did not have. Those days, the enemies did not even have beyond visual range missiles. That was the clear advantage that air power had from the Indian side had over that area at that point in time. And all in all, we were flying the best aircraft of its time at that point in time.
Okay, I was referring, had it been, Rafale or similar generation flight, had it been, with the Indian Air Force at that time, how different things would have been?
We would have been more capable. We would have been able to achieve what we did much faster. Uh, I, uh, Honestly, the Rafale was not available to us then, and neither was any other aircraft. We had to fight with what we had. At that point in time, we had the Sukhoi 30K version. We had the MiG-27s. We had the Jaguar and the Mirage. That was what was in our inventory. Uh, and we fought with what we had, and what we had best was the Mirage, and therefore it naturally had to be made to fight to our requirement, and therefore this challenge before us. And this is going to happen in every war. Irrespective of how much money you spend, when it does come to fighting, you will have some new requirement which will come about, because the enemy also wants to enemy is opposing you. He's not some sort of a standard player who will follow the rules. He would change his tactics. He would change his game plan to counter us, and therefore we will have to be that much more faster and that much more intuitive and supple enough to change our own method of functioning to win. That is most important.
Understand, sir. Sir, also, as it is said, it is the combination of man and machine, which wins the battle for us. And India has time and again showcased exactly that. Let it be the, taking out of ponton tanks with a humble recoilless gun at Asalutar, or, at a very small Indian Nats taking out saber jets in the Srinagar Air Base, or the recent time when Abhinandan's MiG-21 took out the F-16s. So generally, the skill amplifies the machine's capabilities. We can say it that way, sir. So what is your take on that?
In the Air Force, technology is, if you have better technology, you are going to bound to win. Human being is most important. I don't deny that. But the fact is, a human being, always being equal, is only as good as his training. And his training is only good as the equipment and weapon that he has at his with him. And if you are facing a superior enemy with a better weapon system, it is going to be very difficult for you to win. Statistically, chances are that the enemy with the better weapon system and training is going to bound to succeed. Therefore, to not let technology sort of, uh, get away from your equation. It's very important for you to be on top of it, and air power requires technology. There is just no two ways about it. Uh, Air power by itself, without catering for the advances in technology which naturally occur as time flows by, would become as not as capable as what can be fielded from the side which has better technology. This has been clearly demonstrated in all the wars that we have fought in the past, as well as what has happened in the world around us, right from the advent of air power in the First World War, where it was actually used very effectively, to present day wars where air power is still being utilized. I think technology has played a very key role. To wish it away is foolish, and air power is expensive, and air power requires concentrated uh, funding. Air power requires people to be trained to employ those weapons, and air power requires the support of the taxpayer. Very expensive, and requires it to be used very carefully because of these factors.
Sir. Sir, another fact, another interesting thing which is happening is India is developing its own aircraft currently, which is the LCA Tejas. And as we know that you have flown it, you have tested it extensively. Can you please, share some of the aspects of the LCA Tejas and your experience flying that aircraft, sir?
The Tejas was envisaged way back in 1982, 83 to replace the MiG-21. The MiG-21s by then had been serving us since the 1960s, and was being left behind in technology. The various advances which have taken place since then. The enemies had just procured the F-16, and we found ourselves lagging in air combat capability. And we also knew that the MiG-21s were bound to retire, as they had completed, or they were going to complete their total technical life. All these requires a lot of future prediction, and therefore, based on all these facts, the Air Force had put in a requirement for a new fighter aircraft to replace the MiG-21, and it was decided that we would go the indigenous route, the so-called what is now being known as Atmanirbharta, was thought about even then. The thought process was that when the MiG-21s went, we would have a very capable modern fighter of similar weight class, but modern in every which way, and for which the Indian Air Force spelled out what is known as an operational requirement, which was made in 1985 and was released to the aircraft designers in October 1985. It consisted of a number of requirements: the sort of weight, the sort of altitude the aircraft would go to, the sort of uh, G the aircraft could pull, the sort of weapons it could carry. All of these things are listed out in a lot of detail. And therefore, thereafter began the process of making the LCA, which is now known as the Tejas. Uh, ADA, which stands for the Aeronautical Development Agency, which is an autonomous body under DRDO, was set up in 1983. And 85, the ASR, which is the Air Staff Requirement, was released. It was termed 285. And this is the beginning of the LCA program. The Indian Air Force made the ASR, that is the Air Staff Requirement, and it also contributed pilots and engineers for the preliminary design phase, or the PDP, what it is known as. And I personally joined the program in 1992 as a test pilot from AST, and became a part of what was known as the National Flight Test Center. Me and another flight test engineer, we were the first two people to join the National Flight Test Center, which later mushroomed into a big organization with 7 or 8 of us and a number of technicians. And we set about working together with the designers to evolve an aircraft which would be modern, which would have all the capabilities which were set out in the air staff requirement, and would be a winner. Uh, what we suffered from at that point in time was trained manpower, trained designers who knew what exactly to do. And therefore, intelligently, a decision was taken to set up national teams. Like, for example, the National Flight Test Center was set up for accumulating all the knowledge in flight testing into one single organization. The National Control Law team was set about to make a control law for the light combat aircraft. And similarly, the National Wing team was set about to make the composite structure to make the wing. The aircraft was in every which way modern and still remains very modern. The sort of technologies that went into it, the sort of computer capability which we required, all of this were not available within the country. Uh, you may recollect that the LCA flew in 2001. The aircraft which flew before that, the Indian aircraft that is, was the HF-24 which flew in 1961, 40 years back. From 1961 to 2001, we had not done any prototype aircraft flying of the fighter class. And therefore, there was a gap in knowledge. The designers who had learned from the HF-24 program had retired, and not only had they retired, the sons also would have retired by the time the Tejas LCA was being conceptualized. And therefore, there was this gap in knowledge which we had to bridge. And therefore, it took us time, it took us a lot of effort. We went about it in a very systematic manner. We collaborated with many people, including the French, the British, the Americans, uh, and a lot of other people, a lot of other DRDO labs, a lot of universities, a lot of uh, research institutes. Every one of us got together and contributed to make the light combat aircraft happen. More than the technical issues, it was the managerial task of getting such diverse organizations to work together for a common goal. I think that was the challenge, and probably that was the biggest achievement that the light combat aircraft produced. Uh, Remember, the light combat aircraft requires not only to take off once and land once, it has to do it repeatedly over the years. It is expected to last as many as 30 to 40 years. This is not a rocket which is take off once and then is lost into space and never comes back. This has to come down every time and continue to fly. Aviation technology is inherently complex for these reasons. It has to be very reliable because lives are involved. It has to be cutting edge, because if it is not cutting edge, it cannot win. It has to operate in a very harsh environment where the temperatures are in the region of 150 to 200 degrees centigrade. The engines are operating at 1500 degrees centigrade. And they're rotating at very high speeds. The aircraft is itself accelerating at 1500 kilometers per hour. The worst sort of environment that you can think of for an equipment is what is happening in a fighter combat aircraft. And therefore, the engineering has to be special. It cannot be the standard engineering tolerances and design application which is normally you're used to. This is cutting edge, and it requires cutting edge people too. And therein lies the challenge, especially when you're starting off with a clean slate with nobody really uh, knowledgeable. And knowledge has to be learnt along the way by on the job functioning. And that was the biggest challenge the LCA faced and the LCA overcome. We are today here now with 2 squadrons of the light combat aircraft. Both of them have been inducted, the last one about a year ago. And we are in the threshold of uh, signing a major contract for 83 more light combat aircraft of the Mark 1A class, which will have a better radar and better electronic warfare capability. That's where we stand today. And after this, the light combat aircraft is going to have another avatar called the LCA Mark 2, which will be a bigger aircraft, more heavier, but with a bigger engine, with more thrust and better capabilities in terms of range and endurance and weapon carrying capability and inbuilt electronic warfare and all the other features which go to make a better aircraft. So we are in the process of developing and growing from strength to strength as we speak. Our engineers are at it full time in ADA and in all over the country. 300 plus institutions and entities are involved in the design of the LCA. And I'm sure they're all working towards making this happen. And even the LCA Mark 1A and the follow-on Mark 2 successful platforms. We are also looking into the future. The government has started the process of trying to make what is called the advanced medium range combat aircraft, which is a 5th generation to 6th generation aircraft. It is going to be an aircraft which has got stealth capability, which will make it difficult or almost impossible to be picking up on radar. And it will be capable of super cruise, which is the requirement for it to fly beyond the speed of sound, even in dry power, or without requiring to engage afterburners, as afterburners consume a lot of fuel. So all these capabilities are being envisaged in the advanced medium combat aircraft, or the AMCA or the AMCA. So that's how I foresee the LCA and its growth path in the future.
Okay, sir. Thank you. And another recent addition in the Indian Air Force's inventory is the latest Rafale. And as we know that you were the first pilot to fly the aeroplane that was manufactured for India in Paris. How did you how you felt to know that you will be flying Rafale, and how it actually felt while flying?
The Rafale, I had an opportunity to fly it to see for myself where the Indian model of the Rafale would be going. And it just so happened that I was then the Deputy Chief of the Indian Air Force, responsible for its future planning and for procurement. And it came upon my appointment to look at that aircraft. And me being a test pilot, decided to fly the aircraft from the front seat. Many other people had flown the Rafale before that from the rear seat. I was flying it from the front seat. The challenge the point was to learn about the aircraft and all its emergency systems. Many of the switches of the aircraft are located only in the front cockpit and are not duplicated in the rear. And therefore, I had to put in a lot of effort and to brush up on my knowledge of the Rafale and to learn about its various systems so that I could operate it safely. The Rafale is a follow-on of the Mirage 2000 in many ways. It's come from the same design house with the same concepts, and therefore, being a Mirage pilot with bags of experience on the Mirage, I found the flow from the Mirage to the Rafale not as difficult as it would normally be for pilots who are graduating from some other fleet. The aircraft is very pleasant to fly, extremely capable, much more potent than the Mirage, probably about 1.5 times heavier, and with two engines. But the cockpit ergonomics and the cockpit design and all the other features of the aircraft so well sort of balanced that despite it being such a complex platform, the pilot himself did not feel sort of out of phase or behind the aircraft because of its design. The aircraft is very capable. It is probably in every which way the best aircraft in the skies of our country and in its neighborhood. And I'm sure it will equip itself well if we have to go to war. It is the Mirage 2000 of its time.
Understand, sir. Sir, moving ahead, in the onset of the current border tension with China,
Yeah.
what the importance of having advanced landing grounds so close to the border, and why we started, reactivating those advanced landing grounds, especially the one which is the to the topmost point, Daulat Beg Oldi. What is the significance of advanced landing grounds?
Advanced landing grounds allow you to uh, logistically support our army from as close as possible. Uh, you are fully aware of the sort of terrain and environment that we operate in that region. Daulat Beg Oldi itself is at about, if I recollect, about 16,300 feet in elevation. It's difficult for human beings to breathe there, much less sustain themselves for a long period of time. And therefore, they have to be well equipped. They have to be continuously supplied with fresh food, fresh ammunition, and all the other requirements which go hand in hand with support with having an army fielded in those difficult terrain. Having an advanced landing ground allows you to supply the or support the army in its task, uh, especially with fixed wing aircrafts. A helipad is good enough for a helicopter to land in, but that is inadequate for a fixed wing aircraft like the AN-32 or the C-130 that we possess. In ALG, uh, both in the Ladakh sector as well as in the Northeast, allows us to induct large volume and large mass of equipment and people in quick time. Whenever there is a contingency and there more requirement of more people to be put in some place from another place, air power allows you to transport them very quickly. And if there is an ALG available to land them uh, and to get them along with their equipment in quick time. It's also possible to paratroop them, but then there is a lot of inherent problems with dropping things because some of the equipment do tend to you know um, not get together. Some of them probably land up at the wrong place, and the time to regroup required after a paradrop is far longer than what would be possible if we were to air mobilize the army and get them together. Our combination of an ALG along with helipads located at the right place allows us to do all these things. At Daulat Beg Oldi, which is probably the highest airfield I am aware of, which has been used. There is a requirement to, you land there, you cannot even switch off. Firstly, you cannot refuel because there's no fuel available there. And moreover, you cannot switch off because the chances of the engine starting up at those altitudes are uh, iffy at best. And therefore, the engines are kept running and everything is done in quick time. The people who have to get off and the equipment that has to be taken off are taken off immediately, and the aircraft turns around and takes off. That's how it is done. Uh, there are many other advanced landing grounds where all this is not required, where we have a proper infrastructure where the aircraft can land, switch off, get started up. But they're at lower altitudes. They're at altitudes with the aircraft engine, the starting equipment can do the job. Um, the ALGs are very difficult to construct. Uh, they are very remote in their location. Their altitudes are very high. To first get in engineering equipment to clear that area and to set it up is difficult. Ideally speaking, if the road transportation network was uh, good and fully capable of taking the equipment we want. That is the most ideal way to do things because it is very cost effective. Air transportation is expensive, but it is much, much faster. And the ALG, as you say, is something which is very, very important. There is this very popular saying that if you make 3 kilometers of road, you go 3 kilometers. But if you make 3 kilometers runway, you can go around the world. So the amount of engineering involved and the infrastructure cost involved in making 3 kilometers of runway, or maybe even half that amount, and the cost of making 250 kilometers of road and sustaining it and maintaining it are all very big challenges.
Okay, sir. Sir, moving ahead, you had joined the Indian Air Force in the year 1981, if I am correct. Sir, can you please throw some light on your early life, that is school time, the college time, the academy time, and your during your service? How you led your life?
Uh, I come from a services background. My father was in the Indian Air Force. He was a navigator. He used to fly the Canberras. And therefore, all my life, where I'm aware of what was happening around me, it was in the presence of an Air Force camp. It was it was in an Air Force camp with fighters and aircrafts and such like all around me. I was naturally inclined to become a member of the Indian Air Force and to join it as a fighter pilot because that was what I considered the most challenging and most interesting of tasks. Uh, I did not go to college. I graduated from school way back in 1977 and joined NDA just in the same year. Those days we didn't have this uh, 10 plus 2, it was the 8 plus 3. And immediately on completing my 11th standard exam, uh, an ICSE exam, I joined the Indian Air Force through the National Defence Academy in 1977, August. Uh, After 3 years in the National Defence Academy, I graduated to. In the National Defence Academy, we are members of the Jawaharlal Nehru University, and our degrees from that Jawaharlal Nehru University based in Delhi. I joined the Air Force flying part of my career, where initially did our training at Bidar in the elementary flying training school. And thereafter, after 6 months, where we flew the HT2 aircraft, which is an indigenous Indian aircraft. One of the it was the first Indian aircraft to be designed and manufactured in India at Bangalore. It was called the HT2, the Hindustan Trainer 2. It was designed by Mr. Ghadge of HAL, and uh, it was the training aircraft for basic training at the elementary flying training school at Bidar. After 6 months in that uh, place in Bidar, I graduated to go to the Air Force Academy at Dundigal near Hyderabad, where I flew the Kiran Mark 1 and the Mark 1A. Uh, these were the first time that I got to fly jet aircrafts, and also flew for the first time at night as part of my training. So 4 years after I joined the NDA in 1977, in 1981, I got commissioned in June 1981. And thereafter, on being selected for fighters, I went to Hakimpet, which is also close to Hyderabad, just north of Secunderabad, where I flew the Ishkara for 6 months. And after flying the Ishkara, I went to Kalaikunda, where I flew the Hunters. And after the Hunters, I went to the first fighter squadron. We were directly inducted to the fighter squadron, the MiG-21 BIS, which was then located in Pune. Pune was still Pune and not Pune as it is now. And we reported there to 21 Squadron, where we continued our fighter flying career. That's how my initial days were in the Indian Air Force. I must tell you, if I were to live my life all over again, I would have chosen just this way because it is very, very interesting. Never a dull moment. Lots to learn. Lot of challenges and immense amount of satisfaction when you overcome these challenges in every which way. Flying is inherently dangerous. There's a huge amount of risk element involved. And therefore, when you do something and you survive it and you jump across and reach the other side, you have this sort of a exhilarating feeling of happiness and joy that life has been good and you have survived something very risky. And today, having retired after 38 years of service, 42 years in uniform since the 1977 when I joined, one of the most important feelings that I get is of happiness and sort of feeling of immense joy that I survived. And when I think back of to the number of people who are from my course and from people around my course who have, died in peacetime, feel sad for them and feel, you know, bad that they were not as fortunate as I was. And to that extent, you have this feeling of, sadness and you feel emotional about the fact that mistakes are not at all pardonable in aviation. That's the way we are. You make a criminal mistake and you just cannot escape fate.
Understood. Sir, taking you back to your academy days, which was the most fun time you spent with your academy mates? I mean, how you used to get close to your friend? How was the time when there will be a recess time when you get to know the other batchmates, your course mates? What was the most fun time you had experienced there?
There's an immense
Yeah.
amount of comradeship which goes on when you're in an academy, when you're in this, when you, along with course mates, you are dealt the same obstacles and challenges, all of which you have to surmount together. And it is team spirit and team work which gets you across those challenges, whatever they may be. And therefore, there is this immense bond that we form having gone to the National Defence Academy, which continues even to this day. I know my squadron mates and my course mates who were with me at that time are with me forever. And they would be there not only to support me in every which way, they will also be there to help me in a difficult situation. That's a bond which is formed because of uh, the circumstances and the environment in which we have grown together and become what we are today. Uh, so the fun time in the academy is when you're not looked at or troubled or not learning something. You're sort of allowed to do what you want. And the most popular thing to do when you had a fun time was to sleep. But that is something which you really wanted to do most of the time. We had a very action-filled day on the normal course. Work used to start very early. I remember normal time when you got up was 4 o'clock in the morning, and by about 5 o'clock you had to be ready to go to work. Uh, I mean, work meant either physical training or drill or horse riding or some big activity of that nature. And this used to continue for almost till about 8 o'clock, where we used to come back for bath and change. And then there used to be an hour for breakfast. Uh, and then after that, there used to be academics, where you had to sit in a classroom and learn. After 3 hours of physical hard work, it was very difficult to concentrate on academics, and you invariably tend to doze off. And the teachers were very strict. They were army officers, and they were insisted upon you. We even learned how to sleep with our eyes open. I mean, these are all the sort of sleep deprivation which comes about when you're under army training. And it was very challenging. I remember a lot of fun time too, but mostly challenging. Uh, and the moment we finished with academics, it used to be lunch, and thereafter another dose of physical activity, evening games, and then there were studies. Again, all these were all regulated and with set timings. And after that, we used to go for dinner again in uniform. Come back from dinner, and then there is to be lights out where you had to put off your light. There was just no choice, and you just crashed out, and again back to the same grind at 4 o'clock the next morning. This is a very, very uh, tight schedule with not much variance, and therefore we used to always forward to the Sundays which used to come about, and very importantly, we used to look forward to when the course would get over, and we used to have a sort of a calendar which we used to maintain, which was known as DLTGH, and DLTGH used to stand for days left to go home. So that used to be counted. All these terms used to be for roughly about 5 months period. So the days left to go home were sort of, always regularly being counted, and you knew 25 days, 26 days, 23 days. They used to be counted down till day left to go home stood at 0. So that is the sort of experience which I vividly recall from my days in the National Defence Academy. Thinking back, it uh, looked very charming and very interesting. But the fact was that it was very challenging at that point in time, and the days left to go home were very, very important. And they used to be counted down to 0, and they used to move very slowly. The clock used to move very slowly.
True, sir. Very true that hard work never fails to pay off. As we can see that you have reached that paramount position in the Indian Air Force. We truly salute you for that. You have retired from the active service of the Indian Air Force. How are you spending your retired life, and have you developed any hobby lately?
Yes, I find even 24 hours too short even today. I find the sort of reading up which I used to do in the past, I do today. It requires more time than what I have. And therefore, a lot of time is devoted to reading up, and I'm very fond of books. I treasure them. I read a lot. I have so much more other venues, like, for example, now with the social media, Twitter and the internet and everything else to go to get knowledge. I think I'm more satisfied. I find myself with a lot of freedom that I do not have a schedule. I can focus on one particular aspect and focus on it totally on that particular day. Uh, I still continue to talk to channels like yours where I could, inculcate in the youth of today some interest in defense and in aviation, and uh, encourage them to join my profession. Uh, I get involved in talks about the way forward for our armed forces and for the Indian Air Force. I get involved in conceptualizing things as to what we should be doing and how we should be doing it. I think I attend a lot of seminars, webinars, and try and keep myself up to date on technology and aviation related subjects. That's how I keep myself busy. I am also advising many people who are interested on various facets of aviation, and um, I think 24 hours are not good enough. I require more time.
Understand, sir, truly. Sir, youngsters of this age, get inspiration to serve the nation from people like you, who set the benchmark in patriotism and professional service. Sir, do you have anything to say to the aspirants who want to join defense or Indian Air Force for that matter? Any piece of
Uh,
advice?
I think the armed forces is a very honorable profession. Uh, it gives you a great sense of responsibility to be as a member of the armed forces. Your nation looks up to you. The citizens of India have a special place of pride for people from the armed forces. And if you want to go on a path which will get you into the armed forces, it's very important for you to look at the two parts of the armed forces. The first part is its entrance procedure, which are all available on the net today, which will allow you to join. And the other part which you should look at is also your own personality development, which would naturally come about if you were to concentrate during your school curriculum in extracurricular activities like debating and speech and all the other things which are natural. What you're looking at for people who are team players, people who can naturally bond with other people who are bold and who have decision-making skills. These are the sort of traits that we look for in the armed forces. And I'm sure if you're keen to go that route, please concentrate on all these facets so that you join us quickly. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Air Marshal sir. That was a very interactive and informative session we had now. I hope the audience would have thoroughly, get enthralled the way you narrated each and every aspect of the interview. It was an honor and privilege to have you on our show, sir. From all of us in our channel, I would like to wish you and your family a happy and safe life. Valare nanni sare.
Thank you. Jain.